welcome to Researcher Revealed. I'm Dr. Rosalind Austin, and on this podcast, we go behind just the name that's listed on a paper or conference proceeding to find out more about the person who's doing the research. What's their background? How did they get interested in research? On today's episode, we have a first. Yay! I always get excited when it's a first. It's the first time we've had a midwife on the show, and she's early career, but she's going to tell us all about her journey and why research is such an important part of midwifery. Hi, and welcome to Researcher Revealed. On this week's podcast, we have a very exciting guest and another first for the podcast. Our very first ever midwife has come to tell us all about her research journey and the research that she's doing. Susara, can you please introduce yourself to everybody?
Hello, my name is Susara Blunden. I am a clinical research midwife, and I am also an MRes student at Bournemouth University.
Ooh, MRes, excellent first step. Very cool. Right now, before we get into it, because being a midwife, and you said that you were a clinical research midwife, that likely makes me think that you do research delivery. So, in addition to doing your own research with your MRes, so I really want to dive into that. But first, we've got to do the Rapid 11. Are you ready?
Yes.
First question. Are you a Windows or a Mac user?
Windows. I've never ever sat down by a Mac. I can use Chromebooks as well, but I wouldn't have a clue where to start.
Fair enough, me either, if I'm honest. Tea or coffee?
Tea all the way. English breakfast.
Nice. When you're writing or doing some of your MRes work, do you prefer to have silence or music?
No, so I've been experimenting with this. I am possibly the world's most easily distracted person. So I have gone through a whole array of different types of music, and currently I am listening to kind of binaural beats, but beta waves, where you've got one ear kind of, I think it's 18 hertz difference from the other ear. I basically need to be in some type of complete sensory deprivation when I work, and that just kind of helps to completely zone me out.
Interesting.
Yeah, anything too exciting, yeah, and I just go with the music.
I love it. It's such an important, it sounds like a really, sometimes, especially if I'm talking to a really senior researcher, I sometimes get a bit shy about that question, but it's such an important thing, like the environment that you work in and whether or not you need perfect silence or you need noise or whatnot. Because what you were saying is you get distracted easily. And so you need to be in a vacuum. I can't have quiet at all because I am also the world's most easily distracted person. And so I need a noisy environment because then it becomes white noise. But if it's quiet and there's a drop of water 4 miles away, I'm like, ooh, it must need my attention.
Exactly, or I just go and find someone to chat to if it's silent, to kind of for that background noise, which is not good when you're trying to write.
No, it's not at all. Right. Where do you tend to work? In an office or at home?
Again, because I'm a very early career researcher, I have tried lots of different environments. Currently, I am at the hospital library where I work. There is a computer, which is my computer. It has blank walls all around it, and I can just sit there with my AirPods in, my music, and just kind of get on with it. And then there's a pond right next to it, so kind of every couple of hours I can go for a little walk. At home, there's always a dishwasher, washing to do, and at university, there's people to chat to. So I try to, yeah, I've worked out that, yeah, it's that whole sensory deprivation. I basically need to work in a cave.
Love it. Perfect. What time of day would you say you're most productive? Not hour, but morning, lunch, afternoon.
probably mid-morning and
Okay.
then about 6 o'clock. I don't know
Okay.
whether it's because I'm trying to avoid cooking dinner or I just seem to kind of get my best pearls of wisdom out then.
We'll never know. What is your favorite referencing management system?
I've tried Mendeley, can get to grips with
Oh,
it.
okay.
I'm not saying I'm the biggest fan of EndNote, but it's what I'm using at the moment. It's a little bit clunky, but it kind of does the job.
Fair enough, fair enough. And now to very important questions. Um, Desk snack.
I'm not actually a snacker while I work. It's distraction. It's a
Oh, fair
distraction.
enough.
But I do have to have kind of like a big glass of water and then a caffeinated beverage and maybe something fruity to drink.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I don't tend to eat while we're working.
Fair enough. Now, the next question, it might be a little bit early in your career, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When it comes to making figures, tables, graphs, things like that, what is your go-to data visualization tool?
Probably Canva. Excel is
Ooh,
fine. I just done a module on R, and I think I'll leave that for my PhD to understand a bit better. That went a little bit over my head.
nice. I'm trying to teach myself R. Oh, it's good fun. Not so much, but we like to pretend. Right. When you're planning or organizing, so whether that's your MRes project, an assignment for your MRes, or something with the work that you're delivering in the hospital in your clinical role, um, when you're planning and organizing, are you a pen and paper person or are you a digital person?
Post-its all the
Sorry,
way. Put
what?
it Post-its. I always have
Post-its. Oh,
Post-its.
nice. So pen and paper, but in the
And
form of
yeah,
post-its.
yeah. Put it all in a Post-it about I have a big stack of them and then just then put it onto the computer afterwards.
Nice, like it. Right. Now for my favorite question is what book are you currently reading?
Oh, okay. I don't tend to read books. I'm more of an like audiobook type of person.
Yeah, that counts as reading.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, so I am reading The Whalebone Theatre at the moment.
Okay.
I've always got some type of Jodie Taylor time police thing that I'm listening to.
Okay.
I like really escapist
Okay.
books and things, nothing academic.
Cool. No, I love books and like I love finding out what people are reading because then it gives me more to put on my list. Ulterior motives. Right, last question. Who is a researcher that you admire?
Oh, I've got lots.
Okay. Pick one, pick two, pick
No,
three.
probably like someone like Dorothy Hodgkin. She was like a molecular chemist. She kind of did everything. She went to Oxford University, I don't know, kind of after the First World War, and then kind
Yeah.
of managed to get herself a PhD. Um, she discovered like the structures of things like vitamin B12 and insulin. She did loads of really cool stuff.
What's her last
She
name?
Hodgkin.
Hodgkin. She sounds like
Yeah.
somebody I need to read about.
Oh, she was amazing. Yeah, she had like she did this all, she had 3 kids. The biggest thing was she had really debilitating rheumatoid arthritis, and she did
Okay.
all of this alongside being like really quite poorly for vast periods of her life. She got a Nobel Prize. She was one of the first female members of the Royal Academy. She was a girl boss, as my kids
Ooh.
would say.
Wow. Does she have like, is there biographies and stuff out about her?
Yeah, yeah. She's quite well documented online, but yeah, she is who I aspire to be.
I like it. Very cool. I found a new person to read about. I love finding out about researchers, like historical researchers or like interesting maybe research events from history. Like have you ever heard of where's the book? Henrietta Lacks.
No, tell me
Ooh,
more.
okay. So this book, Henrietta Lacks, like there'll be a million different covers. Like,
Yes, I have. So it's her, yeah, her family of finally getting compensation for all of the amazing work that she did without giving consent.
no, so it wasn't so. It's worse than that. You need to read the book.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so she didn't do work per
Well,
se.
herself.
Her cells were stolen from her. She didn't give consent for those cells to be stolen, and they were cancer cells. And those cancer cells ended up being, because at the time, before her cells, everybody was trying to isolate cancer cells and in petri dishes, keep them alive. So you wouldn't have to sample them over and over again. You could just, they would just, because cancer keeps growing, right? But as soon as you took the cancer cells away from the host or the human, they would die. And so the researchers who were at the hospital where she went for her treatment for her ovarian, it might have even been it might have even been womb cancer. I forget which kind of cancer, but basically it was in her female genitalia organs. They got harvested from her, and the doctors who harvest without consent, the doctors who harvested them, those cells ended up being the first immortal cells. So they were able to keep them alive, and they grew and they grew and they grew, and they sent them everywhere in the world, again without her consent. And the vast majority of modern medicine, not just cancer treatments, are built on her cells.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I know nothing. I kind of just scratched the surface. Right, I will go and get
Yeah.
that book.
Yeah, get the book. There's also like a Netflix series and stuff, but the book is really interesting because the author of the book had to work really hard at getting trusted by the family because the family have been burned so much by people in order to hear their stories. And for the family, as represented in the book anyway, they're not so much after compensation. I mean, they deserve the compensation for every, like all the profits that have come from ourselves, but they're more about they want ourselves back
Oh, okay, yeah.
because culturally, like they're from deep south and they've got a little bit of their spiritualism, their faith means mum, Henrietta, can't rest without all of her cells.
Oh gosh, yeah. So it, which just breaks so many, well, yeah,
Yeah,
ethical
yep, yep,
kind of research, kind of like everything that we kind of hold so
yeah,
dear.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which is why you need to read the book because it's really good because it kind of is like a really powerful example of how, like I think like in research sometimes when you're trying to go through ethics or you're doing like PPI work, it can feel a lot like tick boxing and really hard stuff. But Henrietta is one of the many reasons why we have those protections, those guidelines, those whatever, because this is what happens when you don't.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, we have gotten so distracted. This does not bode well, Sarah.
Right,
Right,
okay, we'll be
right.
focused.
I will try and be a better host and not go on about my favorite book. Ah, goodness.
It's very
Anyway,
interesting
so
though.
we're gonna switch gears now and go back to how you introduced yourself. Okay. So I want you to share with us. You're a midwife. You're a clinical research midwife, and you're doing your MRes. Park the MRes for a minute, but I want you to share a little bit about like possibly faster than me talking about Henrietta Lacks, how you got into research and your role as a midwife within research.
Right, okay. So, I didn't ever think that I would be a midwife. If you told me I was going to be a midwife at 18, I would have laughed a lot. Um, I had far too good a time at school and didn't have particularly good grades, didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I was really good at maths. So school were like, do something maths or financy. So that's what I did. And I ended up working in the City of London for a number of years in hedge funds. While I was
Whoa, whoa,
there,
whoa, 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 whoa,
oh,
whoa. This episode is going to be a long one. You were working in hedge funds in London. So that to me, that was already like telling me like you were really good at your job. You were doing well because not everybody can work in hedge funds, one, and two, to work in hedge funds in London, you're narrowing down the amount of people who achieve that sort of level. And you became a midwife?
yeah.
Okay, tell me more.
So when I was working in hedge funds, I started kind of learning research skills inadvertently in order to kind of create funds that clients wanted. So anyway, I was having this London life, and then I became pregnant with my first child, and I went to my first antenatal class and had like this massive kind of midlife crisis stroke epiphany, I don't know what you want to call it, and it was just like, oh my gosh, this is what I need to do with my life. So cut a long story short, I had my first child, and then decided to I'd had enough of working in London. It was very superficial anyway. I decided to move everyone back down to Dorset, which is where my husband and I are from, and become a midwife. Um, I wasn't quite sure that's what I wanted to do to start off with, so I got a job as a volunteer, and then I really liked that. So my kids were really little at that stage. I just got a bank job as a care assistant, and I really liked that as well. And I was like, I really want to become a midwife. It's definitely what I'm supposed to do. But whilst I was working as a care assistant, there was a clinical trial going on in my
Right.
trust. And I got chatting to the team that were running it. And
Yeah.
I got a temporary contract with them for 6 months before I started my training. And that's kind of what got me into research, because I just love that even more from day one. So I'm probably the only person that's ever gone into their midwifery training knowing that actually long term I wanted to become a research midwife, which has kind of propelled me kind of from the beginning. But it's just kind of, it's, there's not a prescribed pathway. It's just kind of being in the right place at the right time and kind of just taking hold of those opportunities and when they're presented to you. So yeah, this is how I am here.
That's so fascinating. I love listening to people's stories about how they got into research because I think to people outside of research, I think there is a perception that there's a pathway because I think a lot of people see research as either being a thing that medical doctors do or a thing that academics and universities do, and they don't actually realize the wider diversity of where research comes from, the type of researchers that are out there, all of that. So I love hearing like how, in reality, yes, CTA, pre-midwife training, yada, yada, but that your actual origin was in the research you had to do in order to create funds for your clients to invest in.
Yeah,
That's so
it
cool.
just kind of happens. And
Yeah. Well, but I think too, like that sort of like different level of being able to look at data, interpret data, whatnot, that's going to serve you as you progress your career because for somebody who doesn't have that sort of background, who hasn't had your unique pathway in, when they sit and they look at their first bit of data, they're going, well, what do we do with it? Right?
yeah, I am really lucky from that perspective that I kind of had a little bit of an insight before I kind of worked in the NHS. And it's kind of only recently that there's kind of that type of capacity building. It's now starting to kind of come into play. For someone like me, because I'm older, I'm more self-aware, I kind of, and I'm quite driven, I kind of knew what I wanted to do. So I kind of was able to kind of really push myself and look for opportunities. But if it is your first career and you're coming out of university in your early 20s, when
Yeah.
people say, oh, research, it's really like, oh, you have to be really clever to do research. You have to do this. It's like, no, I like research because I basically get paid, well, research delivery, I get paid to chat to people. I like chatting. I'm quite good at it. So it's just going to, go and see someone, have a conversation. It's not a hard sell. See if they're interested in what you are trying to research, what you're trying to achieve. If they are fabulous, if it's not for them, you've had a chat, you've met usually someone really nice, and thank you for your time, and then kind of
Yes, but you're underselling the role of a clinical research midwife or research nurse or research physio, research whatever, those people who do research delivery. So before we talk about your your master's in research and what you're aiming to do, just because again, I don't really think I've had a guest who's overly talked a lot about research delivery yet. And like, cards on the table for everybody out there who's listening, I was in research delivery considerable amount of time. So it is more than just chatting to people.
Yeah, no, it definitely is.
Don't sell yourself short, methods.
To me, probably the most pivotal thing is feasibility. All of that work before you actually open that study. It's reading your protocol, understanding exactly what it's not your own work, so you're using someone else's work, someone else's ideas. They've written a research protocol of what they want to achieve, so it's understanding that research protocol, understanding the aims and objectives, looking at the population and the staff and the finances. It's multifactorial, and then looking at whether that will work within your particular trust. And if it does, fabulous, but if it doesn't, I think the biggest thing is saying no to studies which look on paper absolutely amazing, but knowing that there's no way that you will be able to carry them out, or actually the targets that they are saying that you need to achieve. And I think that's probably the hardest bits of my career, turning down a couple of really big studies that a lot of trusts have been doing, because I'm just like, that just won't work, or it's the feasibility of that just can't be delivered at this trust. However, you've got consultants going, oh, that would be amazing, we'd love to do that, that will give us an our population, that would give us some really massive health advantages. And you actually go, but will it though? Because they're not, they want us to deliver this medication, but we've not been paid for it. And actually it means that there's going to be longer inpatient stays. And have you actually asked the women that may potentially want to take part, would they be happy with that? And actually, do we even have the beds in the first place to put them on? And have we got the equipment? Have we got £20,000 to pay for the equipment, because it's not been costed for? So it is a lot of it is that background, it's bit as well. I quite like,
so it's the feasibility, it's the recruitment, then there's data collection.
Yeah, data collection is just, I don't know, if you're a kind of nurse, midwife, AHP, you're so used to taking notes continuously. To me, it's just an extension of that. And you've usually got quite a nice database to do it on as well, which is kind of better than where you'd have to write the notes. So you get better tech. So I'd like that bit. But yeah, it's just a different way of looking at care, and it's working alongside colleagues that are providing standard care, and then kind of hopefully whatever you are doing you can use going forward to either enhance the standard care that you're giving, or just say, actually, the standard care that we're giving is the best that we can possibly do, we don't need to make any changes.
So you're doing all of that, and going to ask a little bit of a probing question here, just to warn you, is, so I'm going to be the first one to put my hand up in the air. So I have a much better understanding of nurse pathways, and in my hospital, we don't really have many midwives who do research delivery. So is that something that makes you unique as a midwife? Or is that fairly normal in Dorset, that the midwives will get involved in delivering research?
I think it's something that we've moulded at the trust that I work at. Having said that, there are a lot more research delivery midwives and nurses that work in reproductive health than people realise. It's probably say that there's actually probably more working in research delivery than there are working academically, because a lot of people have split roles. So they'll do part-time
Okay.
clinical, part-time research delivery.
Oh, that's really cool.
It's slowly getting there. Reproductive health and childbirth is the second biggest recruiting specialty on the NIHR portfolio after primary care.
Wow.
And we just kind of, well, because of the nature of pregnancy in particular, you're working with a family usually for, maximum of 9 months.
Yeah.
So it's easier to kind of have a high turnover. It's not like a, cardiovascular disease or
Where
kind of
you don't
oncology
ever
where you'll be doing follow-ups for, the next 5, 10, 15 years.
20,
We tend to have,
30,
yeah, exactly. Heart failure,
the rest of their lives.
yeah. So it's quite, we don't tend to have the very long follow-up
Okay.
that a lot of studies do. But
Interesting.
also, yeah, we're all very passionate about what we do as well, which is what I think the other thing that drives it forward.
Yeah. So then would you say, because like one of the things like within cardiovascular health, I know anyway, um, there isn't very much research that's done on maternal health within cardiovascular sort of conditions. Like, and it's a real big need, but um, there's still a little bit of a thalidomide hangover.
Yeah, and then there's sodium valproate. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
about that.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's kind of something that's kind of it hasn't been very well publicized, but it's something that kind of really needs to be talked about as well. But from my perspective, there is a lot of cardiovascular research going on in maternity and kind of childbirth, but there is a big gap if anyone wants something to research. Because I can tell you, so you work in heart failure
yeah.
and cardiovascular disease. So the women that I'm seeing with hypertensive diseases in pregnancy or chronic hypertension, at least 50% of them are going to go on to be your population in somewhere between 20 to 40 years time.
Yeah.
But there's a big gap in the market kind of joining the dots. So we've got whole databases of women that have are either hypertensive pre-pregnancy, develop hypertension in pregnancy, develop preeclampsia, develop hypertension, and then superimpose preeclampsia. There's all of these kind of different variations of hypertensive disease, and we kind of give them really good care during pregnancy because it's something that we
Yeah.
are very, very aware of. And after women have had their babies, care is given for 28 days by the maternity team. Care then gets back to kind of primary care,
Primary
and these
care.
women just then float around for
Yeah.
the next however many years to either they get spotted with having high blood pressure, just part of a standard check, or they
Yeah.
kind of start to feel a bit funny and have a funny time because they are walking around with very high blood pressure, and they might have been doing that for the last 5-10 years, but we've not done anything about it. And actually
In between.
there's that big gap there that we can
Yeah.
do some preventative work in.
Future, put that on an idea shelf. So that's really, I'm so glad we're having this conversation because I'm learning loads. Like it's really good to hear that because I think when in our own little research bubbles, you get so deep into it that you sometimes forget to stop and like pop your head up and see what other people are doing. So I'm really glad to hear that like midwifery and like um, research around maternal health is, alive and kicking. And you said like one of the highest recruiting after primary care. So that's awesome. That's really exciting. So perfect place then for you to step up to and do your MRes. So what is your MRes on?
It's actually on women's health rather than maternal health.
Yeah, but okay,
Because
but with women's health,
there's a lot of
it's
crossover.
about
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover and a lot of, because there's a skills gap, and there's staff shortages and funding shortages, a lot of midwives are also doing women's health research because a
okay, so slow
uterus.
down a second. Just because again, this is a bone of mine. By women's health, define that, because for me, one of my biggest things is I hate it when people refer to women's health and they mean their reproductive health.
So women's reproductive health, so gynecology.
Yes.
So all of
Thank
our
you, because women have got more about them than their wombs
yeah.
and their breasts.
So it's predominantly, but it can change from trust to trust. So all of our
Yeah, no, I know.
consultants.
I'm not throwing a stone at you, Susara. I'm just saying, like, I just want to clarify that because I want to make sure that people listening get that you're talking about not just generic women's health, but that you're talking about women's reproductive health.
Reproductive
Is
health,
all I'm
yeah.
poking at.
Yeah, no, reproductive health. All of our consultants are dual trained as a minimum. So they're all obstetricians and gynecologists. So a uterus is a uterus, a set of ovaries is a set of ovaries, whether it's you're pregnant or you're kind of postmenopausal. So we've got we've got the background knowledge. So a lot of midwives have a foot in childbirth research
Yeah.
and also reproductive health research as well. So I am looking at endometriosis.
Okay.
So I have been involved in doing a little bit of delivery of some endometriosis research,
Okay.
but it's also something that really interests me and is women I feel have done a massive disservice with the amount of gaslighting that goes on with a lot of women's health issues, but in particular endometriosis.
Okay.
And I just kind of thought this MRes would be a good opportunity to kind of use some of my research skills, get an award, and hopefully be able to start to make some changes towards the diagnosis of endometriosis,
Okay.
which takes, it's absolutely shocking what women have to go through.
So we're going to slow down a little bit because you are very passionate and I can see like you're like, so just want to slow you down. So how far along are you in your master's?
So I am kind of partway through a systematic review of
Nice.
clinical practice guidelines of
Yep.
how endometriosis is diagnosed in high income countries. I've done some community involvement engagement work on how, well, basically it's co-production of a qualitative study that I want to do with gynecologists who diagnose endometriosis.
Okay, so your project then within your MRes is really focusing down on that diagnostic journey of women who they eventually it comes to light that they have endometriosis. So you're trying to better understand that pathway in the literature, but you're also doing community engagement work with women and finding out what their personal experiences are as well. Yes?
No, I've done it
Oh, sorry,
differently.
I've totally misunderstood you.
So I am this is kind of one of the travesties of endometriosis. There's a lot of work that has already been done academically with NGOs, within government, looking at women's pathways, looking at the issues, and looking why it takes on average almost 9 years to get diagnosed with endometriosis. There's loads of work out there. And for whatever reason, no one is listening. So I found that slightly frustrating, to say the least. I can't do anything about society and making them listen. I decided in an MRes that was probably a little bit too big of a problem to take on. But there is very, very little work where anyone has spoken to gynecologists, who are the people that do the majority of diagnosing, to say, actually, what do you think of the current situation? Do you think it could be changed? So that I've gone from a top-down angle.
Oh, I like that. That's very clever, like to kind of like flip it on its head and say, okay, we know this is shambolic. This is terrible that women have to wait on average 9 years to figure out what's going on with these really debilitating symptoms. And you work in this field, so
Why hasn't anyone asked you what you think? Yeah.
why hasn't anything asked? Well, I think a couple things like that you're probably going to find out, and I don't want you to like give the game away, and you might still not be far enough down. Like but to my head, it's like, Why aren't we talking to the gynecologist? Why aren't the gynecologists speaking to the policymakers? Is it a testing issue? Is it a listening issue? Is it a delay in seeking care issue? Like there's probably like so much complexity to unwrap around that instead of just being, how do I put this? Because so in heart failure, I'll flip it to where I know. So in heart failure, like we've known, I mean, I can't remember the last time, like when we started saying this, but we know that it's a life-limiting disease. We know that, you know, at least 1 million people in the UK have it. We know that the prevalence is rising. We know, we know, we know. And that hasn't changed for years. Right? So, like asking that question of, well, if we know that there's that many people, if we have treatments for it, and we know there's not enough clinicians, and we know that the pathways are poor, well, why do we just keep writing those same 2 sentences at the beginning of every paper? Who's doing something about that? Right? So it sounds like it's a similar thing,
Similar,
just
yeah,
different. Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. So you got the review going on. You've started doing some community work. How are you finding? So you were delivery and now you're driver. So how is that transition been for you? Because this is your baby now. This is your project. You're designing it. You're doing all of the work around it. Like what's that been like?
Oh, I'm loving it. Absolutely loving it.
You like totally just came alive there. Sorry, continue.
No. So, and because I've got a delivery background, some things
Yeah.
to me are just kind of second nature, and then other things are so alien. So it's kind of like my poor supervisors. I'm either just like, oh yeah, I've done that already, and yeah, I've done my ethics, and that all got approved, and yeah, here we are. Or just like a million emails going, oh, I'm not sure what to do. I've done this. Was that the correct thing to do? What do you think of that? So it is kind of a tale of two halves at the moment, I think.
Okay.
But it's
So, Tale
really
of Two
interesting.
Halves, what would you say are the biggest strengths that your delivery background has given you towards your early career becoming, instead of being a research midwife, a midwife researcher? So what were the benefits? What's been the best crossover?
Probably what we were saying about that feasibility. Will it
Okay.
work? How's it going to work? What's it going to look like? Because if you're used to working in research delivery, that's kind of like your second nature. It doesn't really matter whether you've got NHS ethics or you're going through university ethics, but you've already kind of, even though you don't realize you've done it, you've like visualized and
Yeah.
kind of pre-planned how that could come about, or gone, no, that's a terrible idea, let's like rethink. So I just kind of from the outset, I've had, I know how to do my research. I don't have any of the skills about, actually, I now need to go and do a systematic review. Oh, how do you do a systematic review? Oh, let's look at um, clinical practice guidelines. How do we systematically review clinical practice guidelines? Because that's not primary research data, that's grey data. I didn't realise kind of how much of an issue that would be. That's been a steep learning curve, kind of learning about frameworks for that. But yeah, it's really interesting at the same time, and I can kind of see, it's kind of, in some ways, it's given me loads of confidence that I can go forward, and I don't want to stop at an MRes. I want to do a PhD. I'd like to be a postdoc one day. So it's given me confidence with, okay, these are the skills that
Hmm.
you need in order to do it. But at the same time, the more I pick at it, it's like, and like I was saying before about my determination so far has got me to this point, but there is no defined pathway. There is, there's talk of capacity building, there's reports coming out, and there is some preliminary work being done. But if we want more nurses, midwives, AHPs to kind of take the helm and BCIs and do homegrown studies and kind of, take that role going forward, there's not really a defined pathway. And what there is very limited, highly competitive. And, you've got a small group of people that are all really focused, all really determined, and probably be all fabulous, trying to chase, two PhDs between 50 of you and things like that, and then postdoc funding. Yeah,
But don't
that's a
think
little bit
about that.
scary.
Don't
Oh, I like a 10-year
don't
plan.
go that far, right? Keep one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. Don't worry about the postdoc world because, like, all the best intentions, you got to finish your MRes, you got to get into a PhD, you got to finish your PhD. Who knows what the world's going to look like by the time you finish that? So it could be that all of these amazing frameworks that people like Ruth Endicott and Joe Cooper and Alison Richardson and yada yada are all working on nationally, maybe they'll come to fruition. And maybe by the
Fingers
time you
crossed.
do a postdoc, there'll be a job and you can go like, thank you very much. I'll step straight into it. We don't, we, that's too far in the future. We can't predict that. So we got to focus on the here and now. So that comes to my next question. You started to hint at it. What are challenges that you feel are unique to you transitioning from being and still being a research midwife to a midwife researcher? What are things that have been like, oh,
I think probably in some ways I am quite motivated and will just go ahead and do it. But then at the same
yeah, but
time,
that's
because
not the same as what a challenge is. Don't
no,
avoid the question, Mrs.
it is a challenge at the same time, because I'm, rather than actually you're in the driving seat now, just go ahead and do it. It's like I'm constantly asking permission where I actually don't need to ask permission because it's my research. I can do what I like as long as I've got ethics to do it. And it's kind of like actually that realization of, oh, I don't have to ask permission. That's really good. And then actually, it's a little bit scary because working in research delivery is so regulated because you're within a rec framework and you need permission to do everything, where working within a university framework and within a university you can be so much more creative. The world is your oyster, and it's actually getting away from those blinkers and just kind of trying to absorb that potential that working within a university and being your own driver can give you.
So are you 100% in the university now, or do you still work in the hospital?
I do. So I do 3 days a week clinical, 2 days a week university. So I have a foot in both camps.
Okay, so clinical academic. Right. Okay. So future's defined. You know what you want, but that pathway isn't there. So again, still poking at this is because your primary clinical role is as a clinical research midwife. Do you foresee it being easier or harder for you to transition your career into a researcher compared to like if you were just not if you were just if you were instead of being a researcher midwife, you were 100% midwife, ACP, CNS, all of that, and you didn't have that anchor of that research delivery? Do you think that would be different, or do you think it's the same in midwifery?
No, I think it would be different. I think it gives me an advantage having that delivery background because you can see that end goal. You understand more about the bigger picture of where you can or can't deliver research. I think that definitely gives you a hand. I think
Okay.
I probably find it
Well,
easier.
I would agree with you. Like in my own experience, I had similar to what you're saying, like moments with my supervisors where they were like, no, you can't. And I'm like, yes, I can. And they're like, no, you can't. And they're like, for us, amuse us. and we're going to change this or that about your protocol. I'm like, no, but okay. Instead of having like a single number, I'll do a range and like pat you on the head. Because like the big bone of contention for me was like how many people I was going to recruit to my survey and my PhD. And I said 300. And they're like, there's no way, you never will. You never will. I don't know. And they're like, no, you won't. I'm like, well, no, you won't. And so I compromised and I said, fine, on my ethics documents, I'll say 100 to 300. And they were like, oh, okay. And if you get 100, they'll be like, we'll be impressed. And the only reason, so the crazy thing was, because I was doing the vast majority of my survey recruitment right before COVID. And in the November before COVID, I actually went through an ethics amendment to change my upper recruitment limit from 300 to 600, because based on my recruitment rate, by the time I closed recruitment, that's the number I was going to be at. But then COVID hit and it all went Pete Tong.
Did you get your minimum though? That's the
Oh,
important.
no, so I got 333.
Perfect. Oh, a nice round number as well, like 333. I like that.
Yeah, 333.
Yeah, the other advantage I think coming from a delivery background as well is you've got those networks. You know who to talk to. If you don't know, they've got a friend, and because you've got that clinical background, they'll go, oh, talk to my friend, here we are. And I think it's not what you know, it's who you know a lot of time in research as well.
Yeah, and I think that familiarity with that like implementation process. So like with my survey, typically in universities, if you're doing a survey on a patient population, while you might make an appeal to that patient population, it's very rare that they would implement a survey study in a hospital. They rather rely on like public networks and snowballing and stuff. And I'm like, why don't you? And it had never crossed their mind to do it that way. And 100% the reason why I had the success I did is I knew that research nurses would be looking for studies like mine that were easy win. There was no follow-up, right? There was no AEs, there was no SAEs to report. It was literally a one-off. Hi, do you want to play this game? Fill out these 3 questionnaires. I'll sit and help you. Thank you, bye. Right? Like it's a research delivery dream to do that, because it can really boost your recruitment numbers without a lot of hassle and work and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I knew that.
Yeah.
Where I don't think a lot of people in academia realize that sort of, when it comes to research delivery in a hospital, they don't realize the pressure that research nurses are under, like the recruitment targets, the delivery targets, all of that stuff. So if you can present them with an easy win, they're going to be like, I actually had, because I registered my study on clinical trials, I actually had like 10, 11 hospitals being like, can we play? Can we play? And I'm like, sorry, no. Right? But that's that advantage of delivery.
Exactly. Yeah, and you know quick wins where, yeah, if you like you go through the traditional academic way of, oh, we'll just put it out on social media, you're going to get nothing. But survey studies, that's my current, my trust, that's our current biggest recruiting study is a survey study. It involves an iPad and some wipes just to clean the iPad in between patients.
Exactly. And like in a hospital setting, you got a captive audience in a waiting room. They got
Yes, they're
nothing
very
else to
bored.
do and they can't run away. Anyway, okay, so we've talked a lot about the advantages and stuff, but what would you like, as you see your career moving forward, what would you say are things that you are concerned about, worried about, or that you see as challenges because of that heavy research delivery background versus like, so if I'm going to put the shoe on my foot to kind of help you, because I don't know how to word it otherwise. So I have friends who, instead of doing research, they did like CNS ACP roles in cardiology. And they then take like clinical audits, service evaluations off to conferences. So they get their name on abstracts, potentially, depending on who they are, they get their name on a publication, things like that. But in research delivery, because a lot of the work that I was doing was owned by researcher Fred from X university or drug company or device company or whatever, my name was, if I was lucky, in the appendix. So then when I started applying for funding and people were like, where are your publications? I'm like, you know, that sort of thing. So for me, I had to, and I felt like I've pushed myself really hard, even through my PhD and postdoc, to do more publications, because I feel like compared to somebody who's a CNS or an ACP, I'm having to play a bit of catch up, even though like I might understand research to a different degree than they do. I don't have those publications to back me.
This is kind of something that I'm really feeling at the moment. So yeah, I've just set up
Okay.
a research gate account, and
Yeah,
ResearchGate has automatically linked me to 2 studies, but I've got numerous studies where I'm a name in an appendix, but actually I've probably led, well, within my trust, I've been part of the team, or I've led the majority
yeah,
of the recruitment. I've done 99% of the work.
yeah.
I'm not putting down my medic colleagues, because the medics that we work with are absolutely amazing. And a lot of the time they're trying to juggle clinics, surgery, and whatever we're
Yeah,
asking
100%.
in research. But a lot of the time they are there purely to prescribe. And I work in a district general hospital. We do phase 3 and phase 4 RCT,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
CTIMPs, tops. We're not doing anything sexy, especially in maternity. We're
3
getting,
and 4 is sexy. Don't
oh,
disregard it.
yeah, in maternity we get to play with ferrous sulfate and calcium tablets, things like that. So it's nothing that you can't get at Holland and Barrett, for
Yeah,
example. But we're kind of, we've framed whatever we're doing as a drugs trial. It is an RCT. So you are having medic PIs because you need the prescribing doing, but actually you're doing all of the work. You're talking to women beforehand. You're going through all of the contraindicators. They're just coming along, asking exactly what, the same thing that you've done, 2 minutes, signing the prescription, making sure everything as it should be. And yeah, they're an author, and you're there, one of 200 people in Appendix 3. And some CIs are really good at actually
yeah,
putting, the best thing they can do is put you in
yeah,
Appendix 3. But other CIs don't give you any credit whatsoever, and they've got their page, they've got their paper in the Lancet, and it's, on the BBC, and you haven't got a look in, even though you've recruited, you were the highest recruiting site nationally.
yeah, yeah,
Nothing.
yeah.
So that is a real bugbear of mine, and
You're not alone.
many, yeah, research delivery, nurse, midwife, HP, I'm sure.
Yeah. And but I think it's an important thing to talk about and to air publicly, because I think, you know, I know you're like, when I say you're not alone, I've had conversations with lots of other people who've done research delivery, and they either transition from being research whatever to whatever researcher. And in that, you know, there's this real disjunct between people understanding your role in research delivery, the clinical skills that gives you, your research skills that it gives you. But because, like you say, your how the system is set up, you don't get that public acknowledgement of the work, that contribution that you did, that, refining, like within feasibility work. Sometimes, like I've been involved in studies where we've gone back to them and been like, look, this is a great idea, but this is never going to work in the NHS. If you make these 3 changes, it will. And so then they go away, and surprise, surprise, they make those 3 changes, we roll it out, it's successful, right? But the nurse team who suggested that,
Yeah,
Right?
Yeah, we
Exactly. And it's really interesting because I've started to notice it over the last like maybe 4 years, 5 years, is now with bigger studies, is they instead of being in appendixes or in acknowledgements, they're starting now to allow CIs or the first author of the publication to add contributors. And the contributor addition gives you a degree of points and prizes. So it gets linked to your orchid. It can go on ResearchGate. It can, you're not trying to like forever hunt for like your name 3 appendix deep, kind of thing. And so I think there is a bit of the world acknowledging it, but I still think, especially within nurses, midwives, and allied health professionals who start their research pursuit in research delivery, there's massive barriers for us that aren't there for ACPs, CNSs who are specialists. So, like a frailty
yeah.
specialist, a pharmacist, a physio, those pathways. And I'm not saying they're paved with gold, but those pathways are a little bit more accepted because they've got a research pillar. They can progress past a band 6, that, all of those things that research is like,
Yeah. Or the fact that you've actually helped the ACP do their audit because they didn't have the skills, which is fair enough because they're
yeah,
very busy people and they've got 3 other pillars to
yeah,
fulfill. Um, or if you do the audit, you do it in your own time, you deliver it at directorate level, and then it's never heard of again.
again, yeah,
Yeah, it is a it's a tricky one. I don't, there is an answer, but I don't think it's deliverable in the current financial climate,
yeah,
or kind of within the NHS.
yeah.
But
Uh,
it's the real bugbear. And some CIs, like I said, are really amazing at, saying like, these are the contributing group, so you can add it. And
but
that
it's
is
not the same.
it's not the same. No, it's not the same where, the CI that, you know, you pretty much handed them, they have done some work with SAEs, but you pretty much handed them all
Yeah.
of the work and
Sign here.
wrote the draft for them. And then they've done it. But yeah, they get the credit. However, we have tried in the last few years within our trust is that wherever we can within our department, we are now the PIs, unless it is,
Ooh.
yes. So we have started to take ownership, but also because I'm really lucky that I work with some really, really lovely, dedicated consultants who didn't think that it was fair. So they're like, well, if we need to be involved, fair enough. But if you don't need us, we're on the end of the phone. If you need our help, just give us a
Yeah.
shout. But
Yeah.
there's no reason why you shouldn't be PI. So I'm PI on quite a few studies, along with some of my colleagues.
Mm.
Even RCTs is a lot. It's quite tricky
Yeah.
with prescribing. RCTs, if the prescribing is done elsewhere, you can be PI on as well as a nurse or midwife. So there is movement, there are changes. There are starting to be courses like the PIP scheme
Yeah.
for
Except for the
research
PIP
nurses.
scheme. So, do you mean by PIP scheme the associate PI scheme?
No, so that's where the difference is. And again, this
Okay,
is a
what's the
slight.
PIP scheme then?
So the PIP scheme is.
Rosalind from the future here. I just wanted to jump in because the next minute or so of our conversation was all around the NIHR associate PI schemes and PIP programs. However, our discussion was based on old information. And so I'm not going to share that part of our conversation because we don't want to create any confusion around these really great schemes. The Associate PI scheme, supported by the NIHR, is for training healthcare professionals who have no or little research experience, regardless of their regulatory body, in order to become junior principal investigators or PIs. The PIP scheme, in contrast, is for developing the skills of research nurses, midwives, physios, allied health professionals who have experience of working in research delivery in order to enable them to become PIs. I have linked the official information for both schemes in the episode description, including a YouTube video from the NIHR on the Associate PI scheme. Definitely check those out if you're interested in being more involved in research delivery in order to get the full details and to sign up for the next sort of cohort, depending on which scheme that you're going to try and join into. Now, back to my conversation with Susara.
Before I forget, about being a PI on a CTIM, so drug study, prescribing study, you should, if you haven't already, in the back catalog of episodes on the podcast, you should listen to Lynn's podcast. So Lynn, I forget what episode it is. I'll put it in the description. I'll put a link in there, whatnot, so you can find it, and I'll send it to you privately as well. Lynn was, I think, one of the first, if not the first, nurses as a prescriber to be a PI and a CTIMP.
Fabulous. So I
And
know,
she
like,
talks about that in the podcast. That's why I'm saying you should listen to it.
no, that would be really cool because, for example, I know that NIHR have talked about making changes because at the moment on an RCT, you can't prescribe unless you are on the GMC register. So I know there are changes for advanced clinical practitioners, etc., to be able to prescribe, which is great. But again, the majority of people doing work are Band 6 research midwives and research nurses, and this is I've tried this one as well, seeing if the trust, they pay for my clinical colleagues to do a prescribing course. Will they pay for a researcher to do a prescribing course? And the answer is no, because you're not clinical. But I am clinical. I do the majority of work on a ward or in a clinic. I'm based in a hospital, and again, it's just kind of it's joining up those dots with regards to capacity building and giving us the skills to do and deliver research.
It's not, I would go a bit further. It's not just about giving us the skills, it's giving us the freedom and the support to get the certifications so that we can do the job you want us to do. Instead of saying, we want you to do this, but in order to do it, you have to leave what you're doing, train and do this totally different thing that may or may not mean that you stay in midwifery, but we need you to train that way. Like, it's just that I was having a conversation earlier this week with somebody, and they were saying they're fighting a similar battle, but with commissioning pathways. And because where they work, they actually have an integrated care model where both the primary care providers and the secondary care providers all sit in the same physical space. They're not separated, and so the primary care get that immediate resource, but it's had major challenges for funding streams, because commissioning services, they're like, well, you're either primary or secondary, and they're like, well, we're both, and they're like, well, we don't have that. Right. So it's that where I think, because we play with research and we're at the cutting edge of things, I think we're often the ones who are like, what? And then it takes so much longer for like the decision makers, the influencers, the policy makers to catch up with us. And that's where I think, like I'm hearing in your stories anyway, that you're really, those big challenges are, because you're like, sign me up, I can do this. I've got the competencies, of just a miss in the piece of paper.
Yeah, definitely. And, integrating primary and secondary care, that's pretty absolutely amazing for the patients, because it's kind of, a smooth pathway. But the NHS, because it's such a large organisation, takes about 20 years to change anything. And then the thinking will have changed halfway through. It is kind of one of the many special things we have to work with.
Yeah. Anyway, I have just looked at the time. And this has flown by, Susara. I have thoroughly, I feel like we're best friends, and this is the first time we've had a conversation and stuff. So I want to say thank you very, very much for taking your time, for coming on, for sharing your story, for sharing your successes and your challenges in your journey to end up PhD and maybe postdoc, but let's PhD. Let's focus on finish MRes and then
Do
PhD.
PhD, yeah.
Just to flip things a little bit and to end on a bit of a happier note rather than all the challenges within the NHS at the minute is, despite all those challenges, here you are progressing your MRes. I mean, you basically, I laughed in my head when you said this because you're like, yeah, do PhD and then postdoc. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, slow down. But for you, you just see it as like, of course I'll do that. So what would, first question is why? Why are you so passionate about research?
I like research because the things that really annoy me, I can change, or I can at least write about why I would like to change them and come up with suggestions about how they could be changed. I'm also quite good at raging behind the scenes about why they should be changed, but I can focus that inner rage into kind of actually something productive. And also, I think because I work in a women's health environment, I want to make changes that will, could potentially benefit me in the future, can benefit my daughter, my mum, my auntie, kind of thing. And it's not just, it's kind of, I feel because I didn't waste, but because I did something very, very different for the first kind of 10 or so years that didn't really contribute to society. This is kind of like the way that I can contribute going forward and almost like pay a penance to being slightly too capitalist.
You are far too mean on yourself. I'm not going to pick that up, but I think
the
that's
shoes
incredible.
and handbags are shocking, though, as a researcher. That's what I miss. I had such a lovely wardrobe beforehand, and now I basically wear pajamas for a living, and can't afford matching shoes and handbags anymore.
That is very sad. That is a very sad situation to have found yourself in. Last question, and then we'll say bye, is, right, you've talked about your why. Why should a midwife outside of Dorset pick up the research banner and start trying to do what you're doing?
It's not for everyone. Everyone has kind of things that they're good at and things that they're not good at. You might love clinical, and that's what you want to do for the rest of your life, and that is absolutely fabulous. But if it's something that you've thought about, and if you want to make changes, it will give you the skills in order to make changes. And even if I want to go on, I want to be a CI, but there's people that are on my MRes that just want to do an MRes because they want to go into management, and just kind of doing research, even if it is just for a short amount of time, gives you skills that you can use to improve services going forward. There's many reasons.
Aww,
Doing a whole other podcast on it.
I was gonna say, well, so this episode is gonna be in season 3. Because season 2 is just finishing up, and I've started thinking now about actually having researcher revisit and going back to people who were guests on the earlier stages of their career and find out where they are now. So maybe you'll be on that list.
Oh, exciting. Yeah. If you invite me, I will be there.
Perfect. Right, with that, I gotta wrap this up. Otherwise, I think this is gonna be the longest episode ever. Thank you so much. And for everybody out there listening, just remember, if you're a midwife, if you're curious about research, you're curious about Susara's journey, or need some tips or whatnot from her, check out the episode description. It will have lots of details in there about how to get a hold of her. If you have a specific question and you're a bit shy to reach out personally, drop it as a comment on the YouTube video and I will make sure it gets answered. Other than that, I will see you all in 3 weeks' time. Thanks so much. Bye.
Don't go away. Up next, we have the top 3 takeaways from this week's podcast by Dr. Rosalind Austin.
Like I said in the intro, I was so excited about this episode because I've really wanted to have when I started this podcast, I wanted to have good representation around a lot of different clinical roles and non-clinical roles who are involved in research that don't normally get invited to podcasts. So yeah, it was really great to finally be able to have a midwife on today. And she was early career, so she's partially through her master's, but has aims at making it all the way to postdoc, which is just brilliant. It was really lovely to see her passion and her desires for research. Um, we spoke so long today. It is a bit of a longer episode, but I think you'll really enjoy it. She had a lot of really valuable things to talk about. And then we ended up talking for like an hour afterwards as well. So yeah, it was really, really cool conversation. But keep focused. My top takeaway for today is one, another first is she started being interested in research as a hedge fund manager or person in London. And I thought that was really interesting because I think like in within health anyway, we think, oh, we need to put it in people's education. It needs to start earlier in their journey. And I'm finding by talking to as many people as I've talked to in this podcast about research is there is no consistency. Like, yes, there are some people who were introduced to it during their education, but then there were people whose parents did it in like geology or in farming or whatever. And I think actually the pathway to research is unique. And yes, maybe putting in education will help increase the amount of people, but there's so much passion that is needed in order to fuel a research career that I think, you have to be open to seeing it where it happens. And for her, that was in researching the best funds to put together in a client's package. And that now has led to her being a midwife who does clinical research and who's working on developing into a midwife researcher. So you never know where life's going to take you. Second top takeaway for me is that we talked about this quite a bit, and hopefully soon, I've got a little commentary that will be coming out about that transition between delivering research and creating or designing research as a researcher. And she talked a lot about the really good things that it's helped her with. I mean, she submitted her ethics before she even did it with her supervisor. She's like, yeah, I need to do it, off I go. So that's an advantage. But there's other disadvantages as well. And I think it was important that we highlighted those and talked about them. The fact that, the career progression within research delivery is really stilted. There isn't that much that you can do to progress your career to turn you into that researcher. You either go to management or stay where you are. And so having more voices around that saying, there's the possibility of shaping people into researchers. They have the passion, they have the desire, they have some of those initial skill sets, but they just need to have a better pathway. Is really important to hear. So I really valued to find out that, she's joining into that choir of trying to get things to change around people who are in research delivery, their career pathway, so that they can go on and be researchers. So that was very exciting. Right. Last one that I thought was actually really interesting. So she talked about how even within midwifery, although there's a lot of limitations to the research that they can do, which is necessarily a bad thing, that actually a lot of midwives have dedicated time and have built it in one way or another to their career to do research, whether that's delivery, whether that's as doing their own research, things like that. And I thought that's really interesting. And her being a part of that movement and trying to advocate for midwives being PIs, and she is a PI, but to increase the responsibility of being that PI or principal investigator was really inspiring and something that I think nursing could probably borrow a bit more from. But what do you think? What do you think should be career pathways for clinicians who want to be researchers? Should it be embedded into their careers or does it need to be separated? Let me know in the comments. Right. I tried to keep this shorter than normal because the actual episode is quite long, but I hope you enjoyed. Definitely reshare this, leave a review on a podcast platform of choice if you're listening to the audio. All of those things just help the algorithm, but actually they mean a lot to me personally as well. I just do this in my spare time, and so any sort of likes or reshares, they give me a smile. So yeah, give me a smile and give me a like. That's it for now. I will see you all in 3 weeks' time, and until then, keep asking why.